This Three Beards Media podcast is sponsored by Revelton Distilling Company. When Rob and Chrissy Taylor started following the Kentucky Bourbon Trail in 2012, they fell in love with not only bourbon, but the entire distilling process. Just 8 short years later, in 2020, Revelton Distilling Company was opened, offering an entire family of products including vodka, gin, whiskey, and Revelton Shine. Come visit the tasting room at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, where you can sample one of their many spirits, including 4 gold medal winners. Can't make it to Osceola today? Not a problem, as you can pick some up at your local Hy-Vee or Fairway grocery stores. Follow Revelton Distilling on Twitter or Instagram at ReveltonDC or their website www.reveltondistilling.com.
This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes, and if you're not down with that, we got 3 words for you. Like the podcast. Nailed it!
Would you like to sample some of my nuts?
Well, hello, and welcome back yet again, dear listener, to another edition of Old Man Strength, a podcast of Three Beards Media, brought to you by Revelton Distilling Company. We are broadcasting live from the Betfred Sportsbook Studio. I am Tim Johnson, as always, joined by Chris Shipley. Chris, how are we doing this evening?
We're doing all right. Not too bad. Week's almost ready. I'm ready for the weekend.
It feels like Monday was like 3 days ago, but it also feels like it was about 3 hours ago. So I don't really know what is going on with this week. But I'm very much looking forward to the weekend. If we could just find another way to sneak 3 or 4 more weekend days in there, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, no kidding.
But
working from home, it's dawned on me. I still don't know what day of the week it is. I have no concept of what day of the week it is. Down here in this little bubble,
I suppose.
I have no idea.
I think it's good that you are definitely kept in the dungeon in your house anyway. It keeps you out of the public eye in general,
That's right.
which I think is a good idea.
That's right.
Well, I tell you what, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on chit chat because I'm really excited to get talking with our guest. So, Chris, I will go ahead and let you introduce our guest this evening.
Yeah, so we are gracious and very humbled. Chris Hassel, CBS Sports, 2 guys named Chris, Iowa Everywhere, former WHO TV sports anchor, was kind enough to hop on the pod tonight from Florida, where I'm sure it's a balmy 80, 87 degrees there.
Ooh, it's hot.
Chris, welcome to Old Man Strength.
We could just do it. 2 guys named Chris and another guy named Tim. I know. Let's do it. I was actually out at the beach earlier today because I'm sick. I got sick last Friday. And I'm still congested, and my doctor down here, he said, like, for sinus issues, for colds, one of the best things you can do is just go to the beach and get in the salt water. So I was at the beach today for about an hour and a half because I had the day off of work. I'm working tomorrow. I usually work Thursday and I'm off Friday, but off Thursday, working Friday. So I'm hoping that I feel a little bit better tomorrow.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I go ahead, Tim.
No, I was going to say, I would like that. I've actually been a little bit under the weather myself. The water here in Minnesota is a little bit too cold to go to the beach, and also no salt.
No saltwater lakes there. You'd have to go to Utah, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But I am willing to give it a try for science.
Yeah, this is the first time I've tried it. Like it's been in my mind before when I've gotten sick. Like, but a lot of times I'm just too sick to even go to the beach. But I'm starting to get through it a little bit. I just need to knock out this. I'm just still kind of stuffed up in my head. So I'm hoping this will get me over the hump.
I've had just the last week this tooth pain or whatever, and I feel like it's going up into my sinuses and everything else. So I have a week before I get to go to this oral surgeon that I think is going to.
Oh, geez.
So, and I'm not even sure it's going to get removed then. So I've been kind of a bear around the house.
From everything I've heard, tooth pain can be the worst pain of all.
I literally was laying in bed last night till midnight with just a throbbing toothache, and I finally just got up.
Oh,
it was.
God.
It's not like so much. Every once in a while, you can just get a lot of sharp pain, and then it's dull. But I'll live. It's not the worst thing. So, so you were talking about your work schedule. That's one of the things, I guess, not necessarily your schedule, but what does your typical week and day look like? Right? You don't have a typical, obviously, 8 to 5 job. What's that look like for you?
So I usually anchor CBS Sports HQ Monday through Thursday, and we're on the air from 2 to 5 your time, Central Time, on CBS Sports Network most days. Every now and then soccer moves us around, but for the most part, I'm working almost a regular shift. Like I never had that when I worked at WHO in Des Moines. I was always nights and weekends, and it was the same thing at ESPN. But this is nice. Like I'm home pretty much every weeknight for dinner. Go in the morning. I'm home by 6:30 or so, and then on the weekend is when things can kind of get crazy in the fall and the winter, because I call college football and college basketball games. So a lot of weeks, if it's, let's just say the fall, for instance, in college football season, I work in studio Monday through Thursday. Then I'll fly out to wherever my game's at on Friday, do the game Saturday, and usually don't get to fly back home until Sunday. So it that can be a lot. There can be a lot of travel, but I can kind of, this time of year, I can kind of recharge a little bit because I'm only in studio 4 days a week. So I kind of get some of those days back.
Do you still feel pressure, though, like this time of year, to be watching what's going on in the sports world, just because there's still sports going on? Just maybe not the things that
yeah, like we cover, basically every major sport at CBS Sports HQ. I mean, right now we're heavy with. Today obviously would be like NFL schedule release. We'd be going nuts on that. NFL's our bread and butter, but this time of year it's NBA playoffs. It's golf, PGA Championships coming up next week. We're always talking NFL. We're always talking college football. To a lesser extent, college basketball when things happen. I mean, there's been a little bit of talk about what's going on with the gambling at Iowa and Iowa State. But yeah, I feel like I need to watch more than I do. And the reason I feel that way is because East Coast time sucks. It sucks. There are often huge games that don't start until 10:30 on a weeknight here. And I can't stay up. There's just no way. Like last night, it was Lakers-Warriors game 5, and it started at, what was that, 10 here? I made it to like the middle of the second quarter, and I couldn't watch anymore. I mean, I had to go to bed.
You did better than I did. Yeah, I know. It was like 9:15, I think, and I was like, I can't do it. Like
East Coast time sucks, man. I remember when I was like working at Channel 13 in Des Moines, I was a night owl because I worked until 10 or 11 every night. So I thought East Coast time would be great because I'm up all night. And when I worked at ESPN, I stayed up till 3 every night. So I did get to see everything because I worked nights. But not, normal people, it's miserable. East Coast time for sports watching is miserable. You have the national championship basketball game often starting at like 9:20 Eastern time. It's just it's not good for this. So Central time is, in my opinion, much better. I like Mountain time the best. When I've gone to cover Mountain West games, like Boise State, that's kind of where the sweet spot is. It's not too early, and it's definitely not too late. I love Mountain time. West Coast, there's some people that swear by that. Waking up on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. and having football ready to kick off on Saturday, too. And not as many college fans out there, but 9 a.m. on Saturdays, we're kicking off. But, that's, hey, I get to live by the beach. I can't complain too much.
Well,
It's better than old Muscatine, Iowa.
Yeah, well, that's where I was going to go next.
Which, guys, there is a beach in Muscatine. It's just a beach for the Mississippi River with a bunch of waste.
I grew up in Wilton, so
did you? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So you know all about
down the road. Oh, absolutely. Many a summer was spent learning how to water ski on the Mississippi.
Oh my God, you really did that? I'm too afraid of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I remember one time when my sister was water skiing and wiped out because she hit a dead fish floating on the river.
I remember my mom for a year or two was friends with these people that wanted to go to, I think it was a town, it was near Buffalo, Iowa, which is between like Muscatine and Davenport, right on the river, and there was a beach there, and you would go sit on the beach and wade into the Mississippi River. And I remember accidentally swallowing water once and then getting violently ill because I think that was back when they were just pumping raw sewage in there. And I have family members that will fish out of the Mississippi and eat the fish. I'm disgusted.
I don't even eat fish out of a lot of the lakes up here, frankly.
In Minnesota,
yes, yeah.
My brother-in-law, he'll catfish, he'll in Muscatine and Davenport, and he'll take it home and they'll fry it on up. Oh,
no thanks. I can't get that image of Seinfeld where Kramer was swimming in the Hudson. That's the image I get.
Oh my God! He had that stink on him all the time. What's that smell? It's the East River.
Just a dead person floating on by. So let's get into Muscatine.
Yeah,
you grew up there. I mean, everybody knows you're on-air persona. Part of what we do here at Old Man Strength is just kind of talk about how you grew up, things like that. A lot of people have heard a lot of things about your dad, but tell us a little bit about growing up in Muscatine and what kind of parents you had and things like that.
Well, my dad will say he didn't grow up in Muscatine. He was born in Davenport. I lived the first 3 years of my life in Davenport. My dad's from Bettendorf. My mom's from Davenport. But we moved to Muscatine for my dad's job when I was 3. So basically spent the rest of my childhood there until I went to college. And I didn't know anything different. I thought Muscatine was fine. I really did. I mean, I went to high school, made a bunch of great friends, but I was a terrible student in high school. Like, I was pretty good. I was a pretty good kid all the way through elementary, middle school, first year or two of high school. And then, for whatever reason, once I turned 15, 16, I just went off the rails. Just started doing stupid stuff. Started, hanging out with people that were smoking weed. Hanging out with people who were drinking on the weekends. And I just didn't care about going to school. I would skip school. My mom was the secretary at the high school, and I would try to skip school. One time I forged a note from, I want to say I forged it from my dad, because my mom worked there. So I was smart enough to forge it as my dad. And the note said, "Please excuse Chris at such and such time today," because I wanted to go home and watch. I think Iowa was playing in the Big Ten basketball tournament during the day, and I wanted to go watch it. So I said, like, his uncle died. And so the lady who got the note in the attendance office, she then saw my mom later in the day. They were friends, and it's something I didn't even think about. And she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about Chris's uncle. I hope that wasn't your sibling." And she said, "What? What do you mean?" I said, well, his uncle died. His dad wrote a note today. And my mom knew instantly that I made it all up. And God, I was in trouble, big trouble. But my parents divorced when I was about 4, but stayed in the same town, got along just fine. My mom remarried, and had a couple more kids, so I have 2 younger sisters. And my dad always worked at Geneva Golf and Country Club as the superintendent, and I worked for him in the summers when I was in high school and college, cutting the grass and raking the sand, and trying to get up at 5 in the morning every single day of summer. That was tough. But both of them just retired. My dad lives in Davenport now. Both of them are remarried, and all good. All good. I make fun of Muscatine, but it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad of a place to grow up.
I still make fun of Muscatine. It's fine.
And we make fun of Wilton. Yeah.
Yeah. No, as do I. Yeah, for sure.
The only time I ever went to Wilton was we would take our dog to the vet there. Wilton had like the best vet place in the area. And so we'd take our dog to the sun. I think it was called like the Sunshine Pet Hospital in Wilton.
It's the only one that's there, at least was at the time.
Right off the highway.
It's not like that town can. Yeah, exactly. It's not like that town can support more than that.
So you worked with your dad. I worked with my dad for several years.
Oh yeah.
So I have several stories that I could tell. Tell people what it's like to work for your dad, because it's not. Man. Some people think, oh, you had it cushy, you got to work for your dad. Absolutely not, right?
No, and that was in the early parts, the first few years. That was when I was at my worst, and I was always breaking stuff. I was driving too fast. I was, driving the equipment too fast. Wasn't thinking about, the damage I could do to this. These thousands of dollars worth of mowers and pieces that they have out there. So I was always getting in trouble. He's always yelling at me for, just slow down. Just think about what you're doing. You don't need to be driving around like a bat out of hell all the time. You're going to be working till 3 p.m. every single day. It doesn't matter how fast you go. And one of the probably the worst thing that I did. Well, there was 2 things I did. They both involved vehicles. I'll start with the gas issue. My dad, at the maintenance building where all the mowers are kept and everything, they had this huge tank filled with. There was gas on one side, diesel on the other. You fill up all your mowers, everything that you operate, right out of these big, and it pumped just like it would at a gas station, real fast. And I just thought, well, that's my dad's gas, so I'm gonna fill my car up with it. So I took my personal car in high school and I started just filling it up at the gas tank at the country club where my dad worked, and I probably did it 5 or 6, 7 times. And finally he sees me one day. He's like, "What the hell are you doing?" It's like, "Oh, well, I'm just topping off here." Like, what are you using that gas? You can't be using that. That's not yours. I said, "Yeah, but it's yours." He said, "No, it's not. It belongs to the country club. It comes out of our budget. You're stealing gas. You're stealing it." And I didn't understand that at all at the time. But the other thing that I did that was horrible was he was given a golf course truck to do things like in the wintertime, he was tasked with having to plow the parking lot at the clubhouse so that workers could get in and out, so that families can come in and have dinner, in the winter months. And so he would always have a blade on it in the wintertime, and in the summertime he would use it to go, if he had to pick up a bunch of fertilizer or whatever. Well, again, I looked at it as like, oh, this is our car. This is ours. So I'd be at home at his place. He would be out and about in his own car doing something else. And I see the keys to the golf course truck just sitting there on the counter, and I'm 14, don't have a permit, nothing. and I just go out joyriding in the golf course truck. And sure enough, one of the members sees me. And, my dad was furious, but not as furious as he was the next time I took the truck. When I passed him on the road, and I think I took off, and my dad, I remember like turning back around and like going into the neighborhood, and I had a friend in the passenger seat, like I was taking my friend for a ride too, and he pulls up alongside of me, and he just goes, "Christopher, take it home now and tell your friend to go home too." And I told my friend, "Manny, you have to stay with me. If you stay with me, he won't be as mean. He won't be as mad if you're around." So I take him back with me, and I get out of the car, and he said, "Manny, go home. Gone. Get out." And that was probably the most mad my dad's ever been at me. And he explained to me, like, look, I can get fired if people find out my son is taking my 14-year-old son without any kind of permit or license is taking the golf course truck out for joyrides around town. So that's the kind of stuff that my dad had to put up with employing me at the country club.
So obviously, at some point, you put everything together. Though you pulled yourself together.
It wasn't until college. Yes, at college I did it. Yeah.
Did you know in high school what you wanted to go to college for and what you wanted to do, or did you discover that later?
Yeah, I always kind of wanted to be a sportscaster, because my dad, we'd watch the games, and he would turn down the TV volume and turn on the radio play-by-play guy. If it was an Iowa game, it would be Jim Zabel and then Gary Dolphin. If it was a Bears game on the radio, it was Wayne Larrivee for a long time. Cubs game, Pat Hughes. So I loved that. I loved the radio announcers, and I wanted to do that probably from when I was 6 or 7 years old. And I would play games, and as a lot of kids did, you'd announce the game as you're playing, on Nintendo or Sega or whatever it was. Same thing out in the driveway or in the yard. I wasn't sure how to go about it, so I thought there was a chance I would go in and do what my dad did, which was basically horticulture. And I figured out by working for my dad on the golf course that it wasn't going to work out for me long term. So I actually, my first year of college, I didn't do anything broadcast related. I went to Mount Mercy College in Cedar Rapids because I couldn't get into UNI. I had a plan to go to Northern Iowa with my best friend John and room with him. We were two peas in a pod. We were always skipping class together, but he was smart, and I knew he would, at least I thought he'd do a good job in college. And it turns out my grade point average was so low, UNI rejected me. So I ended up going to Mount Mercy College in Cedar Rapids because my wife, my wife, my girlfriend at the time, was going to Co, and that was also in Cedar Rapids. So I figured, okay, I'm going to go to Mount Mercy. I'm going to do some journalism stuff. And I did that for, first semester. And then I thought, okay, I got to go somewhere else. I've got to go somewhere where I can do broadcasting. Because that I really knew then that's what I wanted to do. And Mount Mercy didn't have a broadcast program. All they had was journalism. So I could write, but I couldn't do anything radio or TV related. They didn't have those programs. And Iowa really didn't have that kind of a program then. They had a little bit, but it wasn't what it is now. And so I didn't really consider Iowa because I just thought that the class size would be so big that I probably wouldn't get many opportunities to do anything. So I can't even remember how I decided to check out St. Ambrose in Davenport. Other than I had a lot of family members who went there and really liked it. But I went for a visit and visited their campus TV station and met with a guy named Duke who ran the TV station there, and a guy named David who ran the radio station. And they're like, yeah, you come here, you can call all the basketball and football games you want. You can do, sideline reporting. You can do studio reporting. You can be a part of our campus newscast that we put on every week. And so that's it. That's where I'm going. So after my 1 year at Mount Mercy, excuse me, I went to St. Ambrose and just did as much as I possibly could. Called a ton of games, traveled with the team around the 4 or 5 state area where they played games. And I did that for 3 years and got some internships and some part-time gigs and got some breaks. And that's how, right out of college, I went to Des Moines to replace Andy Fales, who had just left to go to Kansas City.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was wild. And then it turns out Andy ends up becoming one of my best friends when he comes back.
Yeah, and then got to work with Keith Murphy and and that group.
That's what Keith's the one that really sold it. Like I wasn't sure coming out of college. I thought that I would go the radio route. I thought I was going to go get some kind of real small time radio thing, like maybe calling a single A baseball team game, or I remember I applied to be like the voice of the UAB Blazers, but I wasn't. I couldn't. I could not. I didn't talk
about that. We don't talk about UAB on this podcast.
Yeah, they probably hired a guy that was 20 years older than me, but so I ran into the news director from WHO, who's still there, Rod Peterson, at an awards banquet, and he's like, "Hey, we've got this guy leaving, going to Kansas City. We have an opening in our sports department. We'd love you to apply." And so I didn't really know what to think because I never really thought I would be a TV anchor or reporter. I never thought I would go shoot my own video at a sporting event. I did not. I did a little bit of that in college, but I didn't think that I would do that professionally. But I went there and I met Keith, and I was just blown away by how different his sportscast was compared to everything that I had grown up with in the Quad Cities, and how refreshing it was and how fun it was to watch and how nice he was and smart he was. And I decided right then I had to take the job, but I didn't know how long I'd be there. Like I feel like I've signed like year-to-year contracts every year I was in Des Moines because I just didn't know how long I would be there. I didn't know, if I would go back into radio, play-by-play, or what. But I ended up there. I was there for, I think, 5.5 years. Loved it. It was great. That's where basically all the really good friends that I have, other than John from high school, that's where I met him.
How many years has Keith been doing that now? That exact.
I know he's been in Des Moines since I want to say about 89 or 90. He started at WOI, the ABC affiliate, and he probably went over to WHO, the NBC affiliate, in the mid 90s, I would say, mid to late 90s. And then Andy Fales has been in that area since he went to college at Drake from like 93 to 97, and then eventually got a job at KCCI in 99, 2000, and then Keith poached him, got him over to WHO, and he had that short stint in Kansas City and realized that what he had in Des Moines was so much better and came right back. And I thought at the time, I remember I was on RVTV, my first RVTV, 2007, and I was about 3 months into the job. And I remember Keith had his laptop in the RV, but he had left. And he left it open. and it was on an email from Andy talking about wanting to come back and how he could come back. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. They're going to push me out so that Andy can come back and take his old job back. And Keith will say that was never going to happen. And I know that Keith wouldn't have made that happen himself. But I was really raw those first few months. And I made some dumb mistakes. Lost the car keys to the station vehicle at a field storming at Kinnick. Just some stupid stuff. And
what kind of a panic was that?
Oh God, it was horrible. I never found him either. So I remember confronting Keith about it that night. And he reassured me everything's going to be okay. But the station basically told me, this is almost like an audition for you. Another audition. If like this week at RVTV, show us what you got. And thankfully, thanks to Keith, I did some memorable stuff. And when the week was done, I was told, I think we'll be keeping you around. And if we can bring Andy back, it's not going to be for a sports role. And so eventually, Andy ended up coming back. And that's when he kind of created a new role for him as a news reporter. So he came back and started doing stories as a news reporter at night. And then we met and hit it off right away. And he's definitely one of my closest friends now. It's crazy because at the time, I was replacing him at first kind of, and then thinking he was going to come back and take my job, and then to a year or so later be like my best friend in Des Moines was pretty wild. And David is right in this comment. Keith is as stand-up as they come. There's nobody better. There's nobody better at what they do than Keith. He's the real deal. I would trust him with anything.
This photo he shared today, everybody was kind of teasing him because he had this half beard going here.
Yeah, that's probably because it was after RVTV.
Right, and he couldn't shave all week in 2003. So
that was 2003. Okay, so that was when Iowa finally got the trophy back.
Yeah. Again, another date. I don't.
Wow, that's 20 years ago now. 20 years. Jeez.
Well, I mean, you think about it. You mentioned Quad Cities sports television was nothing like the brand going on in Central Iowa,
Mm-hmm.
But also just the longevity of a guy like Keith. Some of these people who have been around for you don't see that even in large market jobs. You don't see people that stick around for as long as they do and have.
And you're going to be seeing a lot less of it moving forward too, because things are changing and not for the better. It's too bad because we're not going to have a Keith Murphy ever again, I don't think, in local TV. Maybe in some other role, but I remember when I was watching local TV in the Quad Cities, like sports guy would come on and be like, all right, we've got the Moline tennis team is preparing for the state dual meet, and Bobby
why does he have a British accent in Moline?
Has a Bobby Pissy Pants has a story on Ashley Larson and how her path to trying to get back to her winning ways. And then they'll run like a 2-minute story on some random tennis player who's not even any good. And then they'll show like a highlight from the Quad City River Bandits. And there was really not a ton of stuff like Iowa and Iowa State related. It was so hyper local for like high school teams and just stuff that you didn't really care about. And then I see Keith's first sportscast, and it's all this different Iowa football stuff and Iowa State football stuff. And he's talking about stuff, big NFL stories. And it just seems so much bigger than what we were seeing, what I was used to seeing from a local sports guy. because he's smart. He knows what he's doing. That's why he's been so successful for so long. But he made it fun, and he put his personality into it. And I had just never seen that from local TV guys before.
I think what's connected him so well also with Central Iowa is the radio show that they do now, and Twitter has made people much more personable and interacting, right? Like so. I think he's done really well at that. He obviously, I'm sure, had a lot of opportunities to move on, to move to ESPN, things like that, and pass that up. But you, on the other hand, took that jump. What made you take that jump? Elias has got to jump in, because I was teasing him about his lawn shoes today. So,
well, Elias refuses to do the no mow May. It's just too bad that he
should, because that's about the dumbest thing.
Does not care about the pollinators. I get it.
If you're mowing your yard, you are the scum of the earth. No, you're right. Keith had several chances to go on to quote unquote bigger and better things. He told me straight up, Al Jaffe, the guy at ESPN, would call his house. He'd be like, hey, how do we get you to ESPN? We're starting up this thing called ESPN News. And it was in the mid-90s when they were about to, they had just launched ESPN2, and they were really about to expand into ESPN News. So they were hiring all these new anchors to come on. And Keith, he's like, oh, man, I love it here. I've been here for almost 10 years. I'm kind of starting a family and getting my roots down. I really like it here in Iowa. And because he's not an Iowan. He was born in the Northeast and was raised in Florida. And he didn't get to Iowa until his mid-20s. But he had already at that point felt like he knew that was the place that he wanted to be forever. And so he just flat out said, no, so I'm going to stay here. Now, in my situation, told you I'd been there about 5.5 years, and my contract was coming up. I think my contract was coming up on January 1st, 2013. So it was like the summer of 2012, decided with the wife, because we were just living in a 1-bedroom apartment this whole time. Just kind of year by year seeing, okay, what are we going to stay? Are we going to go? What's going to happen? And so we decided, all right, if I don't go find some just crazy offer that I can't turn down, then I'm going to stay, and we're going to hopefully, buy a house, put down some roots, sign a multi-year contract here, and really feel like this is home for a long time. So I wasn't going to leave for, a lot of people just jump markets. Like Des Moines is market 70. So, market, 20 would be Minneapolis, something like that. Bigger markets, that's usually how you did it. Bigger markets meant more people watching, more pay for you, more prestige, and you could be closer to the big time or whatever. But I didn't think that any local TV job would have gotten me out of Des Moines. I really don't. Like if Houston said, oh, we've got a position open down in Houston for you to be a sports anchor, I don't think I would have taken it. So it had to be something big, like network level. And so I sent my demo reel out to 10 different agencies. I just went online, searched for talent agencies in TV, for TV sports reporting, newscasting. I found 10 different ones, and I sent my reel to all 10. Didn't hear back from 9 of them. Heard back from 1. If Management in New York City. And they said, hey, they called me up, said, hey, we like your reel. It was actually what the owner of this, the guy that ran the agency, what really caught his eye was I was doing a highlight, an Iowa football highlight, and it was when Wiseman was running all over the place, the fullback in 2012. Mm-hmm. They were using him as like Barry Sanders, and I said like, they keep giving the ball to Weissman. Well, one of his clients was Steve Weissman, who was already at ESPN, and so he thought that was funny or whatever, and so they said, hey, why don't you come out here to New York City and meet with us? We'll take you out to dinner. So that was like a whirlwind. They flew me out there. I didn't tell anybody other than my wife, obviously. On an off day, I flew out to New York City, met with a guy named Josh Santry and a guy named Steve Hers, who was the guy who kind of ran the agency. Josh was an agent as well, but younger, about my age. And kind of hit it off. And they said, hey, we'd like to see what we can do, and we'll pitch you to ESPN. Within a week, they had an audition lined up for me at ESPN. And I was blown away. Stunned. So I go out there, and I just feel like I've got nothing to lose. I really wasn't nervous because, like I told you, I would have been fine signing a long-term deal in Des Moines, buying a house, putting down some roots there. My wife and I are both from Muscatine. We're both from Iowa. I would have been fine with that. Had all my best friends are there. And so I go in, and it was crazy. It was one day, and I did like a 10-minute audition in the studio, and then I met with like 9 different executives who were just, feeling me out, interviewing me. I was wiped by the end of it. And my agents said that they heard it went well, and within a few days they called me up and they said, hey, ESPN just made you an offer, a 4-year contract. And I didn't even think it was an option. Like, there was I had gone into it saying, I'm only going to take something that's a slam dunk. And I knew I had to take it. I might not ever get another chance. I didn't even consider, staying in Des Moines like Keith did. I didn't. I just thought I had to do it. This was what my next step had to be. And my wife was all on board with it. And I told Keith, and he was sad that I was going to be leaving, but he 100% understood. And it was. I don't regret it. I miss working with him and doing, especially the stuff that we did on Sound Off and on the Murph and Andy show. But that's what I've loved so much about doing Two Guys Named Chris, the podcast with Chris Williams, because he was a friend of mine in Des Moines too. And I had always, even when I went to Connecticut and then I came down here to Florida, every single day, listen to the Murph and Andy show. I still feel like I'm part of it. I still feel like I live and die with everything Iowa and Iowa State and all the stories that you guys are following too, even though I wasn't there anymore. Because I felt like I could always go back. And maybe Andy had something to do with that. He went to Kansas City, and they welcomed him right back. So Keith's a better man than I am, I'm sure. Maybe he would have thought more about staying. But I was 28. I felt like I had to do it. And I don't regret any of it. I think every step of my career has been, I think everything happens for a reason, and everything has been great. I've never been in a better position than I am right now. I love my job. I love the hours that I work, the life that I have. And Keith is a huge, and Andy too, huge reasons why.
Well, and I think that what you're doing with Chris is really great. I mean, it's I rarely tune into like a live podcast as I'm sitting here having one, hoping people tune in. But yours, I kind of wait, and because it's just the interaction and the back and forth. You guys do an amazing job. And let's be honest, Chris Williams is the gold standard, I think, when it comes to this genre. So,
oh man, he knows what he's doing.
He's amazing.
He is a smart guy. And so when I was in Des Moines, getting to know him, we were the same age. We graduated college the same year, 2007. And
I'm so old.
So we hung out. And, we would always be at Iowa State events together. And there was a point around 2010, I would say, that KXNO wanted me and Chris to do the morning show. And, I mean, it would have been awesome, but there's like no way with our schedules that we could possibly work it out because, I mean, I would have to like sleep in shifts because I would work at the TV station Wednesday through Monday. Well, I was usually off Tuesday, Wednesday, so I worked Thursday through Monday, and then this would be Monday through Friday mornings from whatever that morning show is, 6 to 9 or something, and I need my sleep. And there was no way that was going to work. So we both said, I mean, it'd be great, but sorry, we just can't do it right now. And so we always thought, well, maybe someday we'll do something together. And then the last, I would say 4 years or so, every 6 to 9 months, we would have a phone conversation, and Williams would say, you know what, we really need to start a podcast. We really do. And I would say, yep, let's do it. And then finally, Williams, pulled the plug, got his ducks in a row, and decided to quit his radio gig and start Iowa Everywhere. And it worked out perfect. It's great. I love it. I look forward to it every Monday and Thursday. I do. It's just fun. I always enjoy talking Iowa related stuff.
So I know we're kind of running tight on time. We didn't really get a chance to talk about what all projects you have going on today. It's great to see like the good fit that you have for you right now. The way you've been able to do your parody videos and all of those things. Mm-hmm. It's something that's unique, I think, to your job that maybe a lot of your peers don't have an outlet like that. What does that mean for you to be at this stage in your career and be able to have sort of this unique kind of personality and creativity that you can broadcast as part of your job? Yeah,
I'm pretty lucky because I think there's a lot of people in a lot of places that wouldn't have that freedom to do other things. It was one of the main reasons why I wanted this job in Fort Lauderdale at CBS Sports HQ. Was that they allowed me to work 4 days a week in studio and call games on the weekends and to work for other entities. Like they said, well, we don't care really who you work for as long as you're doing your job for us the other days of the week. And so they were always fine with calling games for if it was another network. They were fine when I said I wanted to do the podcast with Chris. And they went with these videos. That worked out great because their social media department kind of had these ideas and they weren't sure like who they would get to act in these videos, but then they asked me to do one and they're like, okay, this is a perfect fit. And the reason it was is because all the experience I had doing that stupid stuff in Des Moines on Sound Off. and so it really is. I guess I forget sometimes how lucky I am to be able to just kind of do a bunch of different things, whether it's anchoring in studio or calling a game or doing a podcast or doing a social media skit. And I think that's important for this day and age, when you talk about how there's not going to be another Keith Murphy, the way it used to be is over. Like it's very few people that are going to be able to just do one thing in sports media and be so good at that one thing that that's all they need to do. I think moving forward, you need to be versatile. You need to do other things. Like when I got to Des Moines, I needed to learn how to do other things. Like I knew how to be like an on-air sportscaster and like present the news of the day and call a game. I had no idea how to shoot video of a game, how to edit that video together, how to go out and find a story at like the Drake relays. And that's why, I mean, I struggled at first. Keith took a real chance on me because they could have gotten someone a lot more polished than me that had a lot more chops, that had been doing it a lot longer, that they wouldn't have to go through these growing pains with. But he said he saw something he wanted to kind of mold. He was excited about that. And he got somebody that he could just, hey, go jump through that wall and we're going to film it for sound off.
Well, I think that's what's so fun about what some of the things that you get to do now from like a social media perspective is they remind me very much of those old sound off.
Oh, yeah.
Things. Like sound off being almost ahead of the game on a lot of some of that.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff,
yeah,
right?
It is amazing how ahead of the game it was. And Keith has always been. There were some things that we did that really worked. There were some things that didn't work. There were some things that I did that I hated. I remember one of the things that I did on RVTV that first year when I said I was kind of almost playing for my job, like an audition, was we had like Iowa State was wearing those throwback 1977 Peach Bowl jerseys. Yep. Mm-hmm. And this was for the 2007 game. And we had access to those jerseys. Like there was like a mannequin that, I don't know, Jamie Pollard or somebody had out at the RV. And it had like the full thing, the helmet, the pads, the jersey. It looked great. And it was a perfect fit on me. So Keith had me put that jersey on and go around town and like talk to students about the game and about the jersey and what they thought. And then he had me, he's like, well, since you wore the Iowa State jersey, since you're an Iowa fan, why don't you just be a jackass Hawkeye fan walking around campus making fun of Iowa State students? And we'll have a hidden camera. We'll mic you up and we'll have a hidden camera. So I did that, and that was like, I thought that was probably the best piece we did that week, or that I did that week. I had a megaphone, and I was saying, I was standing up like in the quad. Iowa State fans, it's time to cash in the Chiswick coins. You guys suck. Your coach sucks. And these two guys came up. They went to school there. There was like three of them. They came up and they took my megaphone away. They tried to one of the guys tried to pick me up and throw me down, and we ended up I threw him over my head into the bushes, and then they threw my megaphone in the water, and I ended up telling them a little bit later, hey, we're just doing this for fun, because there was a time I thought I might get hurt. But then, of course, we go back 2 years later, and Keith wants me to do the same thing. and I couldn't do it. I tried, and I just couldn't get to the level that I was 2 years prior when I was fighting for my job. And
oh, we lost him. Let's see if he comes back here.
That's a shame. I was really hoping to be able to ask our Wintrust Mortgage question.
Here he comes.
Oh my God! What in the hell?
What are you borrowing, Williams? Internet service?
Yeah. I got the MediaCom internet down here in Florida. No, but Keith was so disappointed in me when I came back I came back the first time and I said, Keith, I just can't do it. I tried. It's not working this time. Can we pivot to something else? And he's like, no, you can do it, Chris. You can do it. I know you can. I trust you. I believe in you. Sends me back out. And it's just not working. It's not going to be funny. I'm more scared than anything else. And I came back and I was like, this is all we have. And I showed him a couple clips. And he was like, okay, well, I think you could have done better. It was like a very disappointed adult figure, disappointed father figure. Like, I know you have it in you. You just for some reason are refusing to do it, and I don't know why. But there were times when he wanted me to do certain things that it just didn't work for me. It didn't work. Like I couldn't pull it off. Thankfully, they were few and far between. But I always tried to come through for him. But there was one time. I was about to go to Jamaica the very next day. I was getting on a flight in the morning to fly to Jamaica with my wife at like an all-inclusive resort for a vacation. That was going to be on a Monday morning. This was Sunday night. My last day of work. It's sound off, and Keith says, "Okay, you can't go home tonight until you do something memorable on camera." So he wanted me to think of something to do on camera that he could play on sound off. So I'm just racking my brain. I don't know what to do. I just want to get out of there. I just want to go on vacation. So I'm like scavenging through the building, and I'm in the basement, and I have this idea. Okay, I'm going to act like I'm like running through a wall. I have a motorcycle helmet and the Heisman Trophy. We had the Heisman Trophy there, like one of the replicas. So, okay, I'm going to find something to put in front of the door that I can like bust through. So I find all these ceiling tiles down in the basement. So I grab 8 of them, stand them up in front of a doorway, and we're going to start with the camera. It's going to be shooting the Heisman Trophy. It's going to slowly pan up to me in my underwear, holding onto a football, wearing a motorcycle helmet, like a woman's motorcycle helmet with no face guard, like my face is open, and I am going to run as fast as I can, dive into these ceiling tiles, and burst through the doorway. So I do it. And it is horrendous. I'm in serious pain. The ceiling tiles like combust. They get all broken up, and these little pieces of fiberglass in the ceiling tiles are inside my skin, all over my body.
Embedded into your skin.
Oh, it was horrible. Because I wasn't all I had on was underwear. So it was everywhere, all over my back, my chest, my legs. And not only am I in a bunch of pain, but now I'm starting to worry, like, oh God, ceiling tiles discarded in the basement. I started like asbestos. Did I just kill myself?
Did I just give myself cancer?
Yes. Yeah. So I remember emailing the what amounts to like the janitor of the whole building, and told him what I did. And he wrote me back. He goes, "Oh no, you took from the asbestos pile." And he was like, "Just kidding. You'll be fine." But I'm telling you, it ruined that next day, because I was in pain the whole day on the way to Jamaica, and I'm thinking of all these, like, how are these things going to get out? Like, how long is this going to hurt? This is terrible because like all these tiny little cuts all over my body. How is this going to feel when I go into the salt water? Thankfully, the pain really only lasted a day or so, and I got over it. But my God, that was such a dumb decision. And Keith, to this day, I tell him that he forced me into that. And he's like, oh, you could have done something else. You could have done something else even better that you wouldn't have gotten hurt.
Well, I'm sure Keith's a loyal listener. I'm sure he'll pull that video right up for us now.
I wish I had that for you guys because I looked pretty special with it was a green motorcycle helmet. I was in pretty good shape though, I think at the time. So I looked pretty good in the underwear, but
Tim, I'll let you ask that final question and then we'll get Chris on his time. So
yeah, absolutely. So this question is brought to us by Wintrust Mortgage and our friend Kyle Lehman over there. Question we ask everyone who comes on the pod.
mm-hmm.
Chris Hassel from 10 years ago. What advice does he have for Chris Hassel today? And what advice do you have for Chris Hassel 10 years ago?
Yeah. Oh God. Oof. I think that's obviously tougher because I don't know where I'll be in 10 years, what I'll be like. 10 years ago, that's good because I had just gotten to ESPN. I was in my first half year there. The advice I would give him is not to think too much, not to be so micro. Like I felt like when I was at ESPN, it was like I'm just like every day there's some big wig in a corner office that's saying, okay, if he does this, I'm going to put him on this big show, but if he does this, he's never going on this again. Like I felt like every day you had to be almost perfect, and I didn't. I just didn't live my life like I should have probably. Like I was just always concerned about trying to do the right things at work and trying to move up and trying to have everyone like me and understand me. I remember when I started to move up at ESPN, this is the biggest mistake I made. I started to get promoted and they started sending me to like Los Angeles to do SportsCenter at night with Stan Verrett following an NBA playoff game. And I kept getting put in really big spots on really big shows. And I didn't enjoy it because at the time, I felt bad for the other anchors who had been there longer or that came in with me that I was friends with. I felt like I couldn't really enjoy it, be myself, because I was wondering, like, how do they feel? Why am I getting this chance and they're not? And you just can't do that. You can't live that way. You get something great, take it and run with it. Don't feel guilty. That was probably the biggest mistake that I made, that and just trying to meet with a bunch of people who I thought I needed to meet with, and I needed to have them understand me, and I needed to have their blessing on things, and just stuff that took up a lot of my time that didn't need to happen. It didn't mean anything. It didn't matter. There's just no rhyme or reason for a lot of things that happen. And so I would say that's probably that, and like quality of life. Like I was doing some cool stuff, but I was working every night and every weekend and every holiday. And, sometimes it's worth a little bit more to have a better home life, better work-life balance. And I didn't have that for a few years. So that's the advice I would give Chris from 10 years ago. Chris from 10 years from now.
Yeah, that one's kind of a caveat question because that one is kind of getting at what David Larson asked earlier of what is 10 years.
Yeah, that's
Chris Hassel
a
doing?
good question. Where I don't even know where I see myself in 10 years. Like, I think I know this. I know 10 years ago I thought at this point I would be calling NFL games. I would be calling big college football games. Like, I thought I would be doing, like, I thought I'd be a bigger deal than I am right now. I didn't think I'd be doing an Iowa podcast, but that's been one of the most rewarding things I've done. I love it. Absolutely love it. I didn't think I would be, working out of doing digital media stuff at CBS. I mean, but these are two of the greatest things I've ever done. So, I guess the advice for 10 years from now is just kind of remember how good things can be, even if you're not getting the exact assignments that you want and think that you deserve. You can still really appreciate everything you have and put things into perspective with a nice work balance and just kind of, you can do whatever you want, really. I mean, with the different platforms now and different social media, like, don't pigeonhole yourself into one thing. Like, I always thought I was just going to call games. That's all I was going to do. I wasn't going to do any funny videos. I wasn't going to do a podcast or a radio show or anything like that. So I think that's important to also just kind of let life lead you where it needs to, your profession. And don't do things you don't want to do. That's another thing. Like, I would love to tell myself 10 years ago this. And I do tell myself this a lot. There are certain things that people think you should do. And sometimes I just say, I don't want to do that. Maybe that would be better for me in the long run, to get higher profile jobs or games. But if it's by doing stuff that you don't want to do, that you don't really believe in, I don't think it's worth it. Because I did a lot of stuff at ESPN that I didn't believe in, that I didn't want to do. And it didn't get me anywhere. It didn't matter. Some things just don't matter.
Well, despite that, we're glad that you decided to still come on this podcast.
I loved it. Really enjoyed talking with you guys. Fun time. I mean, two Iowa guys, podcast, two guys named Chris and Tim.
Maybe Chris will give you an assignment in a couple of years. You can go to the Iowa campus and talk shit about Brian Ferentz while he's still there.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, Iowa fans hate me a lot more than Iowa State fans do.
Oh, I'm not surprised because you don't sugarcoat it.
If I went on the Iowa campus and did what I did in 2007 and said what I said, did what I did to Iowa State students and did that to Iowa students now, oh my God, I wouldn't have gotten out of there alive.
There we go.
Well, thank you, Chris, very much. Thank you just for your stories, your wisdom, your humor. It's something that I think it's a reason we've wanted to have you on this podcast. So thank you very much for all of that. Is there anything that you want to plug in any way?
To plug? No, I don't. Well, let's see. I still haven't gotten that Fairway meat box I was promised by Chris Williams. So, I mean, if there's anything you guys can do.
I mean, if that shows up, it'll just ruin the bid at this point.
It would. I told Chris that too. He's like, Hassel, look, I'll get you if you really want this thing, I'll get it. I'm like, you know what? At this point, I think it's funnier that it doesn't come.
It's the principle of the matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I really appreciate you guys having me on and for all the nice things you've said.
No, thank you.
Absolutely.
For about 5 seconds into that, I thought Tim was talking about me, and then I realized he was saying something nice. So it was clearly not. All right.
Excellent. Well, Chris, anything else? Chris Shipley, anything else you want to cover?
No, other than I want to shoot this out real quick. Revelton is releasing their second Distillers edition of their new rye whiskey, May 27th. It's only available at the distillery, so make a trip down there in a couple weeks, get that Distillers edition of Revelton's rye whiskey. So
that looks good.
Excellent.
It is good.
Excellent. Well, we have some more news to come with Three Beards Media, so please go ahead and stick with us. But once again, you have wasted another hour of your time listening to Old Man Strength, a podcast of Three Beards Media, brought to you by Revelton Distilling, Wintrust Mortgage, and broadcasting from the Bedford Sportsbook Studios. I am Tim Johnson. You can find me on the interwebs at Tim Johnson MN. You can find Chris at SciGrad. Chris Hassel. You are Hassel_Chris.
You got it right.
Excellent. Perfect. So please go ahead and check out all of that. Go ahead and check out all of our other great content on the Three Beards Media Network. And we will see you guys next time.